Today's presentation is Resilient Design, Achieving a Sustainable Future. This program is brought to you by our sponsors throughout the year. And this year specifically, we are very pleased to have Marlon Blackwell with us. This is all of the technical information for your presentation for the continuing education. Here are your learning objectives. I will not read each of them to you individually, but those are it. Here are our Green Champion Summit sponsors who we want to thank. I think some of them are in the room. Kriya, I see from Energy Trust of Oregon. Better Bricks, if anyone from Better Bricks is here. Interface, Interface is here. Thank you so much. PAE. And PCI Mountain States. Thank you so much for supporting us, because without you, our programs are not possible, including this fabulous reception. Thank you. Tonight's speaker is Marlon Blackwell. He's a practicing architect in Fayetteville, Arkansas. He's asked me to read the quick version. So there's a long one. There's a long gold medal version, okay? Marlon is a practicing architect in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and serves as the E. Fay Jones Distinguished Professor at the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design at the University of Arkansas. Work produced in his professional office, Marlon Blackwell Architects, has received national and international recognition with significant publication in books, architectural journals, and magazines, and more than 160 design awards, including the 2016 Cooper Hewitt National Design Award. Blackwell is the recipient of the 2020 AIA Gold Medal, the Institute's highest honor, which recognizes those whose work has had an enduring impact on the theory and practice of architecture. Earlier this year, Marlon was elected as a member to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, joining a list that includes such luminaries as Alexander Hamilton, Duke Ellington, Eudore Welty, and Albert Einstein. Please welcome Marlon Blackwell.
Well, no comparisons. Happens to be a modesty. I say every once in a while a blind dog finds a bone, so vice versa. Well, it's great to be here, and I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but that always is the case, and the times we live in is always some challenges and opportunities that come with that. I'm gonna, if I can, share my screen, which is always an interesting thing to do in and of itself. Here, let's see. Go. Go. It's coming.
There we are.
Beautiful. All right. All right. Well, it's great to be here for Sustainability Week. You know, I'm here really just to kind of show you a little bit about our practice and how we incorporate some of this mindset in what we do. It's not something that I've ever thought what we lead with. It's just something that's part of what we do. It's kind of integrated. And I'd like to think of design in many ways as a set of interscalar relationships, and that includes all the things that are just commonsensical about how you take care of the sun, how you take care of the wind, and comfort and material and all of those things. But at the same time, they do allow us a way of practicing that we like to call radical practice. I know folks, this is a title of our monograph, at least in Architectural Press, just came out last year. People ask, well, you're in Arkansas, how can that be radical practice? You know, and I always tell folks it's not so much about, you know, being in the avant-garde or about, you know, revolution, so to speak. We use it in its sort of 14th century medieval way. It's more of an adjective. And when you think about in it that way, it's really about the meaning comes from the late Latin word radicalus, which is root. It's about root or roots. And so as in relating to or proceeding from a root or roots. So we believe this is really about a fidelity to our roots, to the fundamentals, which is necessary for us to affect change in the places we work. This idea of transformations, and either in the places we work in or in our own place that we live in. And I think in Thoreau's word from Walden Pond, it's quite relevant here, where heaven is under our feet as well as over our head. And so working where we already are, we try to bring together disparate understandings and forces and observations of situation and place. And when we do that, we like to refer to them as, let's see if I can get this word, as abstract unions. And abstract unions for us are found often in a place of unholy unions, which encompass our approach and help us address questions of practice versus theory, engagement versus detachment from the world, and questions of form and space. And frankly, most of our work occurs in places where detachment really isn't even an option, even if we wanted it to be. So we, tend to think of, and when I say we, I'm talking about my partner, Ati, and I, together with our firm of 25 based in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We think of, rather than a removal from reality, we think of abstraction as the process of connecting to a place, as generating a productive tension between the local and the global, I like to call it the global. And that really is the diktat which we're working with. And looking for possibilities for using really an economy of means for a maximum of meaning. And as a firm of 25, we started out, I started as a sole proprietor 30 years ago, worked into this, just mostly doing residential work, and then slowly shifting to more public and institutional work. Now we're doing a variety of types and scales, everything from, the root work, which is still, carports and bathroom structures and parks and stuff, all the way to a new American embassy in the fourth country in the world, in Central African Republic. So, and everything in between. And there's a reason for that, and I'll get back into it really carefully. So, place is a really big central part of what we're about here. See if I can get this to switch the way I wanted to. So, for us, place is the canvas. Architecture is the medium. It's shaped by the forces of nature and public life, and in particular, to local form. In the place, of the place, for the place, that's how we think about what we do. And at times, necessarily out of place. That's a good thing too. So here, place is defined as a tangible representation of that intangible society that lives within it. I like to call this placeness. And so to make an architecture of placeness, it is really necessary for us to embrace everything, even the bad things, to get below the surface, to get to the underbelly of things, so we can understand these things and incorporate them in who we are and what an architecture of the place, in the place, for the place, sometimes slightly out of place may be. And so often this is really a story of transformation. And what I just showed you earlier was our, let me if I can go back here real quickly. That's it. Our office about a block from the downtown square here. And this is a building that we bought, an old mercantile building from the 30s that we totally renovated for about $70 a square foot. And we had to be pretty creative. In fact, these are all the existing window openings on that elevation. We took them all out and replaced them with all the windows that we love. Everything from Leverwinds to Breuer and more. So we really believe that elements really always are spatial propositions. When you come into our office, you're confronted with this bear and this 14-foot cantilever. It's a long story, but a short story is I used to be a wrestler in high school. Our coach had a brilliant idea one day that we would wrestle a live bear as part of our wrestling practice, not telling us that the bear knew all the wrestling moves that we knew. It's an absolute disaster. I weighed about 125 pounds. The bear, about twice the size of this bear, weighed about 400. It was a mismatch, terrible, but I did it anyway and had an amazing experience. Coming out of that, I thought, well, this is a great payback here. You come in our office and here's this bear. But it's really an existential question about kind of dealing with the challenges and opportunities that you're presented with every day and having the mindset that you can take it on no matter how large they may be. So this idea of transformation is always present with what we're doing. So we were trying to figure out what we could do to jazz our building up a little bit, because you couldn't pull the rock off because it also pulled the concrete block in the structure. So we decided we just paint it, and we hired this guy to paint stripes on our building here, the entire elevation. It took him 4 months to do each of all the stripes. And it really came out quite beautiful. And when it was all done, I said, wow, Jeremy, this is fantastic. What a beautiful job you've done. He goes, well, thank you. He says, next time I'll call you. You don't call me. Never seen him since. But transformation stories are really something that always comes with a conditional optimism. And it's really about taking the world as given to us and finding ways to represent it on our terms. So much of what sustainability is about for us anyway, is really working with what you already have and finding ways to do that. And I think as architects, we do that all the time through a variety of formats. And I'm reminded of a story that happened in Fayetteville post-war with a family you may have heard of, the Fulbright family. If you've ever heard of William J. Fulbright scholarships. Their family owned a mill that used local white oak to make farm implements, everything from wagon wheels to plowshares, axe handles, and a host of things. And they were building up an inventory post-war because the demand had dropped. And Mr. Fulbright had a childhood friend who was also from Fayetteville, who at that time was a pretty internationally known architect who was based in New York. And his name was Edward Durrell Stone. And so he went to his friend, Ed Stone, who happened to be in Fayetteville, who was working on the first fine arts complex on a college campus in the country at that time. And he said, Ed, you're a creative person. I've got all of these inventory that's built up. What do you think we could do with it? And he said, well, let me give it some thought. I'll come back to you. So he came back and he said, here's my thought. Why don't we modify these tools into an international line of furniture and create a whole new source of revenue for you and your company, and also populate my new fine arts complex. So that's what they did. Wagon wheels became stools. Plow handles became these beautiful chairs. And then the plowshares, along with the traditional craft of Ozark basket making, in these beautiful chase lounges. And so a whole line of furniture and more, tables and all sorts of things. And it had an immediate impact in their business, also populated this new campus facility. So its local impact was secure. But the beauty of this story is that if you go to like the Cooper Hewitt Museum today, you'll see these very same pieces of furniture. So its impact was well beyond its place. And that is a lot of what we're seeking in our own work and practice, working in our place, but hoping to have a dialogue, more universal dialogue beyond our place. So the new develops out of the old, but the old, however, is changed in the light of the new. So we're often reminded that we must work between the ideal in our discipline and the more improvised, and not seeing one as a plus and one as a minus or a negative versus a positive, but looking at this as an opportunity to create resonance between these conditions, not trying to resolve one to the other. And it really takes on a more inclusive approach to how we draw inspiration and how we approach our practice. This is really slow. Okay. And also looking at sources of inspiration through that intersection of what is nature made and what is culture made, and looking for the patterns that connect here. I had this put on fade, but it's I wish I could change it all. And then of course taking the everyday. I'm really paying attention to the everyday, being great observers of your place. We're often just looking at things that are quite familiar with folks and resituating them, creating operations through programming or new siting that allows us to rethink the forms that we're surrounded by into things that are much more strangely familiar as we propose the new. Again, that productive tension between the local and the more universal. So I'm going to show you a few projects, and I think one project that's really emblematic of a lot of what I'm talking about is a small church in Springdale, Arkansas, St. Nicholas Eastern Orthodox Church. And this was a small congregation of Orthodox Christians who have a very ritualized and aesthetic way of worshiping. And this is where they were worshiping in a rundown building in downtown Springdale. Hardly the dignified place they were looking for to have the type of aestheticized services that they were really hoping for. One of their parishioners had died, left them some money, so they bought some property along the interstate and wanted to build a new sanctuary and fellowship hall. But the money they had left over was only allowed for them a budget of about $100 a square foot. And so they asked if we could build something like this, a nice Byzantine church. And we're like, well, yeah, maybe if it's made out of cardboard or something. It's like, you got $100 a square foot. I said, well, if that's the case, then could you take this old welding shed on our property and turn that into our church? And I meant like you tear it down and then you build on the footprint. You saw a house today where that was done quite nice. And they were like, no, we only have $100 square foot. Take that and turn it into a new sanctuary. Of course, our hearts sank. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And how do we get ourselves into? Is God going to hang out here? I don't know. And so we decided, just thinking through it, is to what can architects do that don't cost a lot of money? And one of the things is proportion and scale. Proportion and scale are free. So we thought, well, let's go back to the origins of the church, the Greek Orthodox Church, and look at their proportioning systems and see if we can come up with a way to reconfigure this metal box. And that is what we did. And we came back, and this is all the same boxes inside. We just reconfigured it and then added to it as we needed to. And it has everything they asked for, the symbols, the icons. We have a box rib metal panel system. And then we added a little bit of cord in the canopy because I think everything goes better with cord, just a little bit, all good. And the way in which we did that, we just added 10 foot to the front of the existing building to create a narthex running north-south that would get us on an east-west axis into the sanctuary. We have movable walls for overflow into the fellowship hall. The metal building's right there. We just wrapped it with a new metal and stud skin and then added the new face to it, that public face. And then we took all the transition details at the corners and sills and at the eaves and so forth and broke those ourselves so that we could get the seamlessness of the facade. And then we coursed every rib to a window or door or whatever. There's the fire door right where that concrete pad is. You can't see. So everything's integrated. So again, elevating this ordinary system into something just through the use of craft and precision into something I think much more otherworldly. On the inside, we cut a window on the east side in the existing shell to let light in, the morning light. We have an iconostasis. It's made out of bar, angle bar stock. And then the dome that they asked for, which was supposed to go on top of the building, but wouldn't go through the pre-engineered structure. So we actually put it in the plenum. But they couldn't afford the fiberglass dome. They would know we had spec. The contractor wasn't sure he could make one that would work craft-wise. So we were kind of in the middle of construction at a little bit of a dilemma. And he said, well, I have an idea. He said, I have a friend of mine who is an old metal worker and lives about 20 miles out in the mountains. And he loves beer. So we gave him some beer. We gave him a couple of cases of beer, and he gave us a satellite dish. Here we traded. And so we just brought the satellite dish in. It's natural lath. So we skim coated with plaster, jacked it up on a scissor lift, and they have their dome. So that's how we roll in Arkansas. And I was so happy because I told Father John, look, Father John, now you have a direct connection to God. And he reminded me it was pointed, where I'm at to be, was pointed in the wrong direction. Keep moving. The beauty of the story is that in 2013, we were contacted by the AIA National Institute Honor Award program to let us know that this had won an Institute Honor Award. We were, of course, very pleased. But I said, we were really impressed with the budget of this building here. So we did some research, and we've discovered that this is the least expensive building to ever win an Institute Honor Award. So it underscored what we've been trying to do for the last 30 years, which is to demonstrate that architecture can happen anywhere, at any scale, at any budget, and for anyone. It's not just reserved for the few. It should be accessible by anyone. And that's something that's really kind of driven us as we've continued our practice and continue to grow. And so just working with humble materials that we can find in our own place. In this case, our cash crop in Northwest Arkansas is rocks, because we don't have good soils. We don't have an agricultural base, but we have our rocks. And what folks would do is take the rocks they find right there on the earth and tilt them up to make cladding for homes and churches and that sort of thing. It was a very economical thing to do. And so we got a commission, probably one of the nicest commissions we've ever gotten, to do a whole health institute on the campus of the Crystal Bridges Museum. And this is an institute that's about life management, well-being. It's about preventative health, not treatment, and will be a national headquarters for that. And we thought, well, how do we start? And the first thing that popped in mind, we have to find a way to tap into the material culture. We can't just go national and not forget our place. So starting with this idea of a material, boy, this is really slow. I must change that. We begin to abstract and develop our own way of updating this sort of vernacular to essentially make the base or the podium for this building, which acts as an extended threshold into the campus of Crystal Bridges. And this is it. And so, and then sitting astride that of a series of offices, lounges, and meeting rooms and meditation spaces. Down below is a lobby with exhibition hall that you can see here, as well as event spaces and offices as well. And this whole building we were encouraged by the owner to begin to introduce curves, because we tend to like to do a lot of boxes. She didn't like boxes. And it begins to resonate with the Moshe Softy design Crystal Bridges you see up on your left. We also did a parking structure that I'll show you here in just a little bit. She's also in the process of building a medical college, a 4-year medical college dealing with whole health. So very serious, incredible investment in this intersection of art and health and well-being. And the whole curving shape is really curving around a ravine. So it's really being shaped by nature, by the particularities of the siting of the building itself. And here you begin to see how it wraps around the ravine and these event spaces in a series of porches and a community porch in the upper floors. Now, there you get a sense of a 3D and its relationship to the art park and the convergence, which is an artscape in the ravine. So let's keep moving. So the material strategies here, we began to think about this idea of the cave and the forest. And so the cave being the stone base that rises up, that's the kind of geological connection, but the forest, we're in a state that's 60% forested. And we needed to develop a brise-soleils on the east and west to really control the sun. So we knew we could get energy savings, but wood is not the most durable material on the outside where I'm at. So we found another material, which was a kind of pre-weathered brass, but then we, to sort of the durability, but then we began to bevel the edges of these fins to catch the light and shadow to change over time. So here you can begin to see this sort of mock-ups that we're testing the stone, we're beginning to test the fins, this whole system of articulation. I like to move fast, and this is killing me. But you can see the reflection off the fins, this idea of the forest astride the cave, the stone, and the base. Wow, this is so slow. Okay, so this is our first wall that we have up now. And this is a 19-foot high wall, probably the tallest wall ever of this use of this type of piece. And we're using vernacular rope joints. So we had a lot of testing on how these are rope joints sit proud and really a great shadow play, but it's a great way to kind of beef up the mortar for these large stones. So it's currently coming together. It's currently under construction. Then as you move to the inside, this idea of the cave and forest are carried through. I just have to be patient. Here we go. So the entire canopy of the ground floor and up above, it's all CNC milled pecan, Southern Arkansas travertine floors, stone floors. So it's really at a museum quality level because it's actually part of a museum campus. But as you move up, there are open offices and consultation rooms above, as well as sort of project labs and lounges here as well for ideas happen in all sorts of spaces, places inside. And one of the feature spaces is a 30-foot high cone that's actually bent towards the north to capture north light, which is a meditation space for all the folks that work here, but also for visitors, patients that come as well. And this is all kind of hand plastered You can get to see that figure with this antechamber where you kind of decompress and then into this space, which captures, again, this north light and softly just deposited. It kind of just falls very gently along the conical walls. Wow. Okay, and then the event space down below on the event lawns. And then the building itself really is exhibiting the art as well, sped up for that with built-in trains and stuff. So it's really about an intersection of art, nature, architecture, and health and education. So this will be finished in 2025. Construction here. They did a 3 a.m. concrete pour on Friday. I wasn't there, thank God. And I just want to show you very quickly our parking garage. We're supposed to, this took the place of a surface parking lot. So we had to put 800 cars in a structure. But we didn't want to just make the structure about cars. It faces right onto a art plaza and play scape into a ravine that rolls up into this plaza. So we developed a proscenium, 150 feet wide, 4 stories tall, where art performances take place. There's a glass bar underneath the shop, so it really gets integrated into this landscape of art, nature, in the rest of the campus. So it's not just a silent figure here. Here you can begin to see it as it manifests itself once it's all done. And it just got completed a few days ago, but this is the sort of the type of play. This is the Studio Brian Haynes out of Philadelphia, really great landscape architect, now under construction. And as you come back up through, you see the proscenium. We call this the fish head. Come through, kind of get that sense, that kind of interface with the parking. So everybody comes through this. This is my grandmother's 64 Pontiac Tempest on Missouri. So we've been doing a lot of work with Sherwin-Williams, PPG, using automotive body paint to create really distinctive colors for the buildings. So really trying to test that out rather than just using what they provided, and then using metal flake to enliven the surface. So this is all a 64 Pontiac Tempest. My grandmother would be very happy with that. Here we go. It really works quite well with the sky. Comes together. And then we have an incredible lighting program in this. So this thing pulses at night as well, with a variety of light phase shift changing. So one of the things I want to talk about transformation is landscapes and how those two are part of, what do you do in the face of things like this and the annexation of rural land into suburbia. And it's something that's endemic everywhere, not just where we're at. We were asked to do a pediatric clinic in this new suburbanized landscape. And we've always thought about the fugitive nature of silhouette. As a former cartoonist, I like working in silhouette, working in section, and how that works against the horizon in these rural settings. The problem with a lot of suburbia today, most of the buildings there are all trying to outdo the other. It's like 18 or 19 jigs and jogs on them. They've got maybe 32 different materials, all of this sort of excess and kind of undisciplined way of approaching. We thought, what could you do for this new pediatric clinic that we're asked to do that could just use one form, 2 colors, and 1 material. That's it. So turn the volume from 11 down to 2. Of course, we're operating in suburbia, which is also known as the land of beige. Everything's beige, different shades of beige. I don't know why that is. So this is what we came up with. You can kind of see where our building is. And so it becomes a kind of singular abstract figure in this kind of suburban landscape that deals with the car as well as with people and bikers, has certain entries for patients as well as separate entries for the staff and the doctors here, and then they kind of come together in between as they move to the upper volume. There are no windows on the south. The patient rooms with HIPAA aren't allowed to have windows, so we skylight everything from above into the rooms that get natural light. As you're passing by at 40 miles an hour, You're kind of this cayenne red that the staff picked out this color. You kind of go by the brise-soleil to the reception room, and then it totally switches. So it really becomes a kind of split personality building. It sits amongst these bioswales, and basically acts as a type of sign or billboard as you're moving from the south. So the idea was to give it a very distinctive identity, but also to provide performance here. So it has a shaded porte-cochere where the kids are dropped off. Their families, they go in, they can go up an elevator or go up the stairs. It's lit by blue glass, skylight from above. They emerge through that kind of ephemeral light into the reception area, which is very zen, doesn't have the chaos that you normally find in most pediatric clinics, very soft light in all the pedestrian or the patient rooms, excuse me. As well as light for the nurses station and for the doctors too, from above, all this great light that keeps this building very well lit. And then the circulation is quite lovely. This very efficient, again, working together with the staff. They have their own places out back where they have porches for taking lunch. And again, just a separate interest. So something that provides some dignity, I think, a work environment for those that come there every day, the staff, as well as for the patients that come. And this building has become known as the WTF building in Rogers. Some people love it, some people hate it, but we think of it as a new species of suburban architecture, a way of embracing the not so good things of the landscape and trying to turn that into a positive. So in this line of transforming landscapes, we had an opportunity to do the largest urban park in America in Memphis, Tennessee. And this was, of course, with James Corner Field Operations as the lead. Really, we're doing the landscape. We were invited into what is called the heart of the park, the central 200 acres. This was a park that had been around, but didn't have a lot of identity to it. It did reflect the sort of, I would say, the socioeconomic and racial makeup of Memphis. It was often in the red, and it just suffered from kind of rather low attendance and so forth, although it had these great assets as well. So the idea was to uplift these assets and provide about 7 or 8 different programs and new activities along this expanded lake that could generate revenue, generate activity, and really be a much more welcoming presence in the community. It used to be a penal farm, and that also came with its own stigma from the 1920s to the 70s. And the prisoners there would work the land, and then they had blue ribbon cattle, and that's how they fed themselves, and then they would sell off whatever excess they had back to the county, which obviously the prison kept. And so when this became no longer an acceptable form of rehabilitation, then they turned it back over to the county. And the county had difficulty maintaining it, and where speculators came in, wanted to turn it into tract housing and a host of other things, those suburban developments. Well, the citizens around that area rose up and said, we want to keep this kind of beautiful natural asset more as a park, even though it has its agricultural aspect. All of this is useful, and it could become a park. So it became a nonprofit. That's how Shelby Farms was born. You can see the heart of the park where we're working. So we have a visitor center, a restaurant retreat center, conference center, stage pavilion, boat pavilion, shade pavilions, all of that to help articulate the edge and the spaces between with the field operations. One of the things we noticed on site is that wherever there was shade, there was people. And it reminded us that we were working in old agricultural land, fields, formerly fields, with no trees. The trees aren't going to come in for a while. So every building had to create its own shade. So that's part of this sort of porch language that is attached to each of these figures that make up the ensemble of buildings we did. Looking back at the vernacular ways to create shade and breezes, the dog trots, porches. We did our first building, an 8,000 square foot visitor center with an 8,000 square foot porch that faces to the south. It's all made with aluminum bar grade panels, stuff that you typically walk on, that used a lot in the agricultural industry, technical industry around this area. So we turned that into a cladding system. We figured out how to not only get it to become cladding by disengaging it from the superstructure and creating substructure, but also make it operable too. And then we have third growth cypress, local cypress, as the other primary material. So you approach through this box, and then through the box, and then through these series of breezeways that take you out onto the porch with this 32-foot cantilever, all cooled by 5 20-foot big ass fans. So the thing about being in Memphis in the shade, you're still going to sweat. So we ventilate that shade much the way that nature does, and make this great place that they can program almost year round because it's in the shade. So the places for yoga, receptions, and they get revenue for it. So it's another stream of revenue and creates a really quite responsive skin and reflective light.
Yeah, take off your shoes.
And then that sounds good. I don't know. Is that the kid in the screen? So, and I think it's quite beautiful how Jim Porter and his team kind of configures the land to work with the buildings as well. It's a kind of nice simpatico that's going on there. And so other things we did were the picnic pavilions we call the crickets, where people love. They're great for family reunions. They're sometimes booked out 3 months at a time for that, but kind of dot along the edges here. And then of course the boat pavilion that has all the kayaks and canoes in it, as well as concessions along the water, and it's also near the water play area. Okay, similar palette material, just really 3 materials for the whole project. This is the stage pavilion that uses the event lawn, but also acts as a pavilion of shade, or excuse me, stage for events on the lake. And then when it's not being used, is a shade pavilion itself. So kind of multifunctional. It's really important. And then the last building is the conference center, the restaurant conference center. At the time this was built, we were working with Elon Musk, which is not Elon, Kimball Musk, Elon's brother, the other guy you never hear about. But he has actually farm-to-table restaurants based in Boulder. This is their first ground-up restaurant you see on the right side. And the really distinguishing character here is an 80-foot deep porch where there's more seating outside than inside, right along towards the west. So that's 10-foot high canopy that knocks down the sun, which sets up these beautiful sunset dinners and so forth. It really becomes a kind of hub of activity for the park, both day and night. And so since it's been open in 2016, it's turned a profit every year. Its attendance has increased by 50%, and its reflection in terms of diversity has increased by 60%. So what it underscores is the ability, I think, for architecture, the transformation of a landscape through architecture, through landscape, to certainly strengthen institutions and to be very impactful in the community. So this other landscape, I've shown you something, again, that's more suburban, more rural. I want to show you something more urban in Detroit, Michigan, in 6 Mile. This is in the Livermore McNichols neighborhood on the Marygrove College campus. It's traditional African-American liberal arts college that back in 2014 basically had to close through loss of enrollment, financial trouble. Fortunately, the Kresge Foundation came in and rescued the campus, which was you can imagine the impact in a neighborhood where that is the sort of center of activity and pride, what that was having. They wanted to repurpose the campus into a cradle to career campus for 1,000 students. So from prenatal all the way to 20 years old, you could go to school here, folks from the neighborhood primarily. And so the idea of this pursuit of lifelong learning had to really begin in those formative years, from as an infant up to kindergarten. So that was going to be the cornerstone of this campus. So it's the Marygrove Early Childhood Education Center. And this is all a 1-story building because of the age of the kids and so forth, that nests itself in the corner of the campus, right up next to these historic collegiate Gothic buildings that makes up Marygrove, all that made out of limestone. And the way in which we handled this sort of mat scheme is to carve a series of courtyards in here that bring light into the middle of the building, but also create controlled areas for play, for learning, and really enhances the wayfinding in this relatively big, squarish building. And you can begin to see the neighbor, all the single family houses here, and then the campus and how it nests itself into that. Now, we had a couple of challenges. One was that we didn't get to do the community engagement. That was done by a third party because you had to have the trust and the credentials really to engage with the neighborhood, but we got to interpret the information we got back. We were working with Wendy L. Jackson, with the Kresge Foundation. And one of the things that we got back was that they did not want a monochromatic building. The community wanted something much more polychromatic, that's more representative of their culture, of their inclusivity and diversity in the neighborhood. And so, which was kind of terrifying in a way, because there's one thing to do lots of color on the inside, but to pull it to the outside, it's kind of scary, at least for us, because as you've seen already, we like solid colors. Well, I got to thinking about it, and I thought, polychroma, and yeah, she said, sort of like a quilt, like a patchwork, perhaps, of color. And the other thing that we had to do is the building had to be as resilient as these stone buildings. So we came upon just a simple glazed terracotta panel rain screen system that was made in Germany that would have incredible resilience. It would look the same 50 years from now. That's what they wanted. But we needed the color. And when we're talking about quilts, I was saying, have you ever heard of Gee's Bend in Alabama with the quilt ladies, Gee's Bend? She goes, well, of course, I've been there. And I was like, wow, so have I. And I said, well, what do you think about that? She goes, I think they would be a great source of inspiration. So we went and met with the Petway family there and just sort of getting a feel for how they do quilts and how they use accents and such. Every color costs money. So we were limited. We had to have a ground which would work with the existing shades of limestone, but also accents that would enliven that. So we, again, went to Gee's Bend, met with the folks, came back and did over 150 different iterations. These are just a few of these palettes, and with prices attached to each one of them, to find the exact right one, which obviously is the one I've been showing with you, but it really brought it to life, and it really is vivid and a great source of pride. And unlike any other thing, the identity issue is I want something that no one else has. And I think we certainly have achieved that here. And then, of course, the light is grabbed from a series of windows from above, from the side, from the front, and very gentle welcoming with the wall that takes you into the entrance. You just sort of kind of roll into the lobby area. As you come into the lobby, the first thing you see, of course, is a courtyard with its controlled softscape and hardscape, places for, again, reflection, places for play, places for learning as well. There's 3 of these courtyards, and they really inform and activate all the spaces around them as well. So there's no space that isn't cross-programmed in some way here. And all of the classrooms have direct connection to the outside. So a learning lesson can take place here, but can immediately move to the outside to make a point or whatever. So that immediate connection to nature is something that was also designed by the community because, as you know, a lot of Detroit, 60%, I think, is somewhat empty, and abandoned in certain degrees of it or blight. So having this constant reinforcement, positive reinforcement of nature every day was something that was desired. And then just multiple ways that these courtyards can be used. Again, everything from dining to play to doing lessons. And like I said, every space, even in the hallways, we carve away places for people to sit, places to socialize. In this case, a reading nook. All of it gets activated as learning space. Even there's community rooms, there's a coffee shop. So when the parents drop their kids off, they can hang around. They don't just have to go back home. We have community groups actually meet here as well. So it has a role to play during the day and even at the end of the day. These are all lit by monitors from above. Here, a series of 4 monitors that bring light down into these spaces. then this spills out into a southern lawn that's Margie Ruddick, our landscape architect, she did a beautiful job of weaving in a learning and playscape amongst this grove of trees. And it's really quite lovely, incredibly active throughout the day. But at night acts as a beacon back to the as it faces back to the neighborhood. Actually, most of the folks from the neighborhood who walk actually come this way to go to school. So let's see, does it want to change? See how this works. Okay, great. So it's been a huge success. I just want to say that the word that people use for it is joy. The students, the faculty, the staff, there's just a great sense of joy in this kind of world within a world that we're fortunate to make. I did go back to Gee's Bend, just by chance was traveling through, and I stopped and saw Miss Petway, see what she had for sale for her quilts. And I told her, say, you know, that building I was telling you about is done. She goes, oh, really? And I said, yeah, let me show you. And I had a photo on my phone, and I showed it to her, and she looked at it, and she goes, you know what? You give me an idea for a quilt. So it all kind of comes back around. So one of the things that our firm has kind of gotten to be known for a little bit, and I think you probably see a little thread of this through some of the projects, is the desire to ennoble the prosaic, to take the everyday and to elevate it in some form. And we had a recent opportunity. I've only shown this project about 3 times since it just sort of got completed in Fort Worth, Texas. And it's an unusual project. It's a mixed-use project, but it was really born out of being in Detroit. While I was in Detroit, I met a young developer by the name of Philip Kafka. He was buying up 1 million square feet of basically abandoned property near downtown and trying to repurpose it in some ways through housing enclaves, public plazas that would sprout up collateral economies around that, restaurants, office space, that sort of thing. And what he was using was the simple Quonset hut to articulate a lot of this. And normally you see a Quonset hut out in the country, really light industrial, maybe somebody will live in it once in a while, but that's usually how it's used. Philip tends to use it in a much more, I think, creative way and makes these enclaves. It has one called the Caterpillar as well, which is 600 foot long that he cuts up into housing. But it's something that he also wanted to test out in Fort Worth, where he grew up in Dallas, Texas, he and his father. So this project, it's called PS 1200. It's in the Magnolia neighborhood, emerging neighborhood, Fort Worth, Texas. And we're all using the Quonset system. It's got housing at the top of the backdrop, sitting above a base of offices, and then a restaurant, grab and go with a gallery and bookstore, and then a public plaza. So it's a private development with a public plaza. And this is the plaza's all designed by Julie Margman Dirt, very great landscape architect. I'll show you a little bit about it. So we'd never worked with Quonsets before, but we thought, well, what a great opportunity. Mile and a half away is this really cool museum, so a few of you have seen. We thought, well, this thing is just, you know, so amazing, and maybe, you know, we could draw inspiration from it. We've got the serial condition, we're going to use Quonsets, and we're going to ennoble the prosaic. Only to discover in our research that Mr. Kahn had already beat us to it. These are actually stockyards in Fort Worth that he was actually looking at as well as documented. So the inspiration, we're all kind of getting aligned here to see how we can take the simple system and urbanize it in some form. So once the bases are established, these go up in about a day and a half. It's all prefabricated metal panels made by Steelmaster. And then, you know, of course, then you insulate everything and finish it on the inside. The big trick that we wanted to try was consistency in vocabulary, because we had all these disparate programs. They're not all the same height, the same size. So we also looked at taking the same system and flipping it on side to make a cladding system. So we have structural and cladding. And in this case, same with the plaza. So the restaurant, the grab and go, and all of that become this Quonset system that's flipped on its side. And it sounded really easy, and it was really hard. So I learned a lot of lessons about custom curves and all of that sort of thing. But we'll be better prepared next time. But it came out quite nice. You can see it along the street, and the way that articulation of these forms by cutting away at them and then filling gave some life as well to the street here. And we create these anomalies where these little hybrid windows that get sort of pulled out. So we're kind of stretching and pulling with it. Then you light it up at night and you see into the restaurant, into the chef. This is the kitchen. You see the chef and his team working on stuff. So these curved drums that you see on the outside are actually seating carrels on the inside of the restaurant. And then all along with the grab and go, that's a vegetarian ice cream shop. Actually pretty good. And you can begin to see too how we're starting to use the interstitial spaces. We started to develop our own system of cutting away, having to invent metal collars and other ways to make openings and so forth in a fairly standardized system. And then just how you create light in these places as well as the bookstore. And then on the alley side, so you're living up above, you have your porch in the back that shades obviously the offices below. And, you know, a much more messy context along the back. And so I think this works quite well with that. That's all stucco, entrowel stucco infill. And the inside, just one beautiful space, and then the insertion of a maple plywood service box that has the kitchen in it, the bathroom, and then up above a bedroom loft with its bathroom as well. So just real simple, very minimal. And then the interstitial spaces again that are getting activated. What Julie did is she uses recycled stone here. She only uses two trees, a pond cypress and a regular cypress. Now, most landscape architects I know, they use cypresses to screen things or like walls. Julie uses them like jazz notes in there, and she plants them close to the building because she wants this to become a forest that overtakes the buildings at a certain point. So it becomes much more dense. So that's what's the intention of this is. And businesses are moving in now. In the base here, we have a barber shop, and the community is really starting to own this, and it really becomes as much as anything a public work as a private work. Get back to the plaza, the jazz notes, and then a little snippet of evening, and the scene right out of Rear Window. Our photographer climbed on the building across. This is the only time you'll ever see all the shades up and no one at home. So, but really excited about the project and how, you know, this can find its way, this prosaic system, into an urban condition and make itself at home. So I'm going to move now back to Bentonville for these last two projects. We'll wrap it up. So very often for us, it's about taking the culture of a place and using that in some way to shape the building, either through form or material. This is a building called the Ledger. It's a 200,000 square foot office building, about 4 blocks from the town square in Bentonville, a town of about 40,000 people. It was intended to be a WeWork's first ground up building. It's a design collaboration with us and Michelle Rochkin and Christian Callahan and Haruka Rucci. And they were part of WeWork's architecture team. And everybody knows what happened to WeWork. Middle of COVID, it imploded. These folks were let go, so they started their own firm, and Michelle already has his own firm in Mexico. And we decided just to keep working on it as a team, a collaboration, and finish it, see it all the way through. And the idea of the building was pretty simple. Here we are, and the #1 mountain bike destination in the country is Bentonville, Arkansas. And so the idea of mobility and biking as a way to shape this building, become part of the building, to take public space and run it diagonal of the building into a series of public plazas, it was great. So my battery, somebody's battery is low.
For your charger, so it will not work.
Oh, sure. I love technology. There you go. Everybody happy, got the juice. All right. So let's dive into this just real quickly. So you can bike all the way up to the 6th floor. You can walk, it's all 1 to 20 ramps, and the exteriority of this inscribes itself in the interior. So this, again, this idea of mobility becomes part of the interior in this co-working office environment. It's simple palletized glass and copper, and these copper ramp spandrels actually become planters as they get to the different terraces up above. You can begin to see how it kind of works too with the street. So in the 6-story building, what happens is it's actually stepping back away from the street, so it doesn't loom over you as you get up close to it. So you can see this, the ramps is what they do is they kind of get this thing to move away from the edge of the street, and really back there's a city park on the other side. And you kind of get a sense of that. And then activating the sidewalk as well with the dining and so forth that's happening. Yes, people there is great. And here you go. So that becomes sort of enlivened, but you get the sense of a very actual minimal wall presence on the street. But then up above, you can begin to see the motion of the public plaza and these creatures, these Ozark creatures carrying Ozark gems. This was Stefan Sagmeister. This is all glass tile inlaid into the concrete. They all move up and they collect on the top ledger, and they spell out "now it's better." So it's a kind of a whole story that folks really like too about being in this place. So you got to get a sense of the activity that takes place throughout the day when it's not 107 degrees. It happened, but here it is not a rendering. This is actually how it is. So it really is a quite dynamic and active place. So that they're billing it as the world's first bike movement. And Stagmeister came in with these shingles and made some of the local bass up on our parking garage wall that sort of shimmer and glint in the wind. And really gets another opportunity for art to come together. So, anyways, there's the idea of material culture, but then it's just the culture that you can use in the architecture. So the last project I want to share with you is a school, a maker school, 6th through 12th grade. It's funded in such a way that anybody can go. So the tuition is tied to what your family makes. Some people pay $500 a year. Some pay $25,000. This person here, her name is Louise Thaden. She was a pioneer in aviation. She was a colleague, contemporary of Amelia Earhart. They were friends, and she had won several cross-country air races, a Vindex air race. That was a race, in fact, that she and Amelia Earhart were discouraged from entering because they were women. And they entered anyway and did the race, and actually not only won, but set a record that Louise Thaden did. She was born in Bentonville, Arkansas, grew up. She learned to fly there, flying through barns. She was a barnstormer, sort of stunt deal. Then she moved to California, and then ultimately settled in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. She's the muse for this school. This spirit, this innovative, pioneering spirit, having both roots but also wings, which you can take off into the world. And so it's really about being in your place. The campus has no fence or anything. It's integrated with the community. It has 3 signature programs: Wheels, Meals, and Reels. So every student gets a bicycle. They learn how to work on bikes, fabricate bikes. Reels, they learn how to tell stories through animation and film. And then Meals, they have productive landscapes where they learn to grow food, produce food, and actually make food. Teaching kitchens and all that, testing kitchens, that sort of thing. And they're all working together in a kind of holistic way to create this really innovative curriculum. The school is located about 8 blocks from downtown and 30 acres. It used to be the old county fairgrounds. We're under no illusion that this is really urban. We like to call it urban pastoral in our neck of the woods. So we're looking at farm groupings, chicken house, and other things. We're starting to think about the master planning. This was a collaboration with Andrew Pogon, another really great landscape architect, and SQ Dumas Ripple, who did the home building here, and then we did the other buildings. So we're all working together on this master plan. Just trying to think of this kind of layering of landscapes, community geothermal, how we manage the water. We have a water lab on the corner here, which is a learning scape. In fact, there are no canopies here on the building. You are encouraged to walk across the campus, to get wet, to feel the cold, to use this landscape, which is a series of Osage prairie grasses and Mima mounds and so forth, to, be educated by it. So learn by doing. So this layering by design, the landscape, really becomes, learning by design as well, a learning landscape. So again, hands-on projects and activities, and these wonderful porches and breezeways that are interfaces all along the landscape as well. And so this is a rendering of the master plan we came up with, a series of figures, buildings, classrooms, performing arts, the home building, a bike barn, and then this beautiful landscape. Simple palette, box rib metal systems with various profiles. We use plywood for ceilings. We use one of the buildings is all wood, the home building. Others are just simple steel and steel stud buildings, and then we use FRC panels. So very simple, simple palettes. So I'll start with just the first building, which is called the Reels building, and all the buildings too are 1 story tall as well. So it makes it universal design. And this is a building where we're using an operation called pitch and roll, which is the way in which you guide a plane, but it's also the way in which you can create dissimilarity, variety in the section of the classroom. So we're operating on this idea that this is a school that wasn't about the systemic sameness of most school classrooms, but every classroom, every space could be varied. And so this pitching rolling also got us daylighting into the middle of the building, places you wouldn't often expect to find it. And then, this sort of fold up here acts as these beautiful chapel-like spaces for the director's office and counseling rooms, but it also serves the community. So there's a sloped community lawn. This is where they project their films that they're making in the Reels, the animation film department here. It's got the arts in it as well as the administration. And so it becomes part of the Bentonville Film Festival that the actress Gina Davis hosts every year. So it's another way in which the school integrates itself with the community. And of course, I talked about PPG and Sherwin-Williams earlier. We got together with him again. We started with a 67 Shelby GT Cobra, green gold, lots of gold metal flake. Then we kind of calibrated that with Arkansas Osage prairie grasses to kind of come up with this very distinct color that sort of changes throughout the day. And really quite lovely when it begins to fuse with this beautiful wild landscape of the campus. Carving through that, these linear buildings would create a series of cross axes. These are really outdoor classrooms, but they also create breezes and transition zones for students moving from class to class. All kind of clad in plywood. You don't see any real lighting cut out of it. Everything, the lighting is disengaged or all up lighting. You can see that in the hallway, a vertical space with this incredible daylighting inside. You rarely have to turn on the lights in this space, except at night. And by pitching and rolling, you could scale the building where you need it to go. So here we're rolling up next to the boulevard, scaling towards the cars. We have the brise soleil for the western sun, as well as for acoustics into the student lounge. What we like to call the double first cousin is the Wheels building to the Reels building. It has all the fabrication shops, robotics, wood shop, bike shop, all of that. And it makes an interface onto Main Street, which was required by the Design Excellence Program here. And so we have this perforated porch that knocks down the western sun, but also gives some idea of space on the sidewalk. We also have along the south side, the productive landscapes. Students are actively involved in growing producing the food here. And it's a great place to go for lunch, by the way, in there. The inside, again, much like Mary Grove, all the spaces are used for education in some form. This is a hallway, but it's also the project lab area, and what's made there is exhibited in these sort of custom columns that we came up with, vitrine columns. But just a variety of different programs throughout. And the bike shop, the door rises up. They work on bikes as a community service on the weekends for folks. The students learn how to service bikes, and then get to see. So this activity, this hands-on making, you're moving everywhere from physics to mathematics to a host of different collateral subjects. And if you look beyond, you'll see what's called a performance building. This is where they teach acting, drama, they perform plays, they also have music, and choir, that sort of thing as well. It's a teaching facility. It's got a 300-foot long loggia. This is something I designed while I was enrolled back in 19 at the academy there. So a little bit of Rome got into this. But rather than put the building on the corner, like I said, it's we thought of it more as not more urban pastoral. We're actually putting a public plaza on the corner and framed by this loggia, and then the building moves more towards the center to frame the central axis through the campus. Here you can see how it's used. Bicycles, skateboarders, pedestrians, whatever, all becomes the kind of urban edge along this part of Main Street, really to set up an idea of how other buildings might respond to Main Street as well. There's no lobby here. The porch is the lobby. And then once you enter in, you can go off to the left to the rehearsal rooms or into the auditorium itself. That auditorium actually models the facade, so the rake of the auditorium is the rake of the building. It begins to shape the building. Here we're using a 71 Camaro. Instead of green gold, we're using gold green with gold metal flake dust in it as well. We're nothing but consistent. So you can begin to see how this works. The stage is actually on the ground level. So they actually make their stage sets in the wood shop over in the Wheels building, and then roll those across the campus and then take right through the back, right onto the stage. So there's, again, a kind of interconnectivity between the different buildings here. Then we just use local red oak plywood to make up the articulation of the walls with one monumental window, something we thought of as education space. It would have a connection to nature that you obviously could control, but would be a kind of inversion of the planar and angle geometries of the inside. In this case, it's all hand trowel plaster, kind of bend the light softly around into the space, provide again this connection with nature beyond. And you can kind of see that whole different geometry on the outside. So it's a kind of figure with the angles and then the softness on the inside. It's a nice backdrop to the activities on the landscape. So the last building I'll share with you, and again, I'm so sorry that I had this on fade. It's like, I feel like I'm in a Sam Peckinpah movie. But the bike barn, so these are the Barnstormers. That's their mascot is an owl. And the headmaster, Clayton Marr, said, we have to have a barn. We have to have a gym. We don't have a gym. We don't have the money for that just yet. What could you build us a barn? And I said, sure. And he said, yeah, it's 10,000 square foot barn. And let's see if this will move. There we go. So somehow I'm behind. Here we go. Boom. So here's this barn, but it's off the grid. So this is a barn that has to be naturally ventilated. So like a real barn. So we built it like a farmer would build it. Now, what I told him, I'd been working on a contemporary Ozark barn for about 30 years and finally got the opportunity, the commission to do it. And so we're using local cypress that we can get, which that's what the painted boards are. They're spaced kind of wider apart than normal. They have copper screen behind them to get the air flow that we needed. And then there's a series of dormers that operate, that create a chimney effect. All of these doors that you see here open up. So the barn turns into almost like a pavilion, but can again ventilate itself naturally. Then the soccer field, the pump track, so bikes can roll through and through the barn and onto the track system. You can see the dormers, every other glass pops open, and the heat rises in and out of that. And the porch provides a really nice shade where the parents hang out when they're watching soccer, and or the bikers hang out too. So how did we do this? Well, we didn't have the money for mass timber, sorry. So what we decided to do was a mass of timber. So we went to a local truss manufacturer and that makes residential trusses, and showed them this diagram of our truss and said, can you do this? And like I said, yeah, we can do this. And they all made it in one piece. It was pretty amazing. And so you can see the trace of the traditional gambrel Ozark barn, I believe, underneath here, and then how it expands to capture the porch, the mezzanine, the dormers, and create this new figure through the trusses itself. And we're using flitch plates and other things too with the wood. And this is the interior. And it has a very kind of transparency to it on the inside, a screen-like effect, and all for the air to kind of come through. And you see all the doors open up. And then simple things like this stair element, how do we begin to clad that and make it part and consistent with the articulation system we had? So continue to think like farmers. We just took 2x4s and cut them in half diagonally and then rotated them and back screwed them to make the whole cladding system for the rails as well as for the stair itself. You can see this as the sun begins to set. Throughout the day, it's pretty much opaque. It's this beautiful red form or silhouette. But as the sun sets, our lighting designer designed it in such a way that the lights slowly turn on. So it becomes at dusk, it becomes somewhat translucent. And then as the sun really drops over the horizon, it becomes totally transparent, this beacon for the school, as well as an icon in the community. So with that, I'm done. Thank you.
Q&A.
I have time.
You know, if you stop screen sharing, I think that we can open it up to the virtual attendees.
Okay.
And so please, we don't have a mic, so if you have questions from the room, if you have questions, just project your voice. We do have a mic. And if you are online, please feel free to unmute yourself.
Do I need to unmute?
I think you're good. I think you're okay.
Well, I appreciate everybody's patience. It's so slow.
Does anyone have any questions? Maybe we could just.
Thomas
What are you working on right now that you're most excited about?
Everybody has. I always think of them like children. I love them all. I'm excited about all of them. I want them to do well.
What are you working on right now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are working on a variety of projects. I mentioned this earlier. We are working on a new American embassy for Central African Republic. So we're very excited about that. This is an embassy from the ground up. It has housing, ambassador residence, Marines, the whole thing. So we're really excited about that. We're should be finished hopefully within our lifetime. We have just finished an orthopedic sports medicine outpatient clinic, our first venture into serious healthcare beyond the pediatric clinic. This is starting construction. It's 100,000 square foot, one-story essentially building with courtyards and so forth for people that are going through this is for sports VIPs as well as for regular folk like you and I. Break a bone, you go there. We have patient rooms around the courtyards, and it's pretty nice out in a 30-acre meadow in Springdale, Arkansas. We're working on little park structures in Herman Park with Michael Van Valkenburg. We're doing bathrooms, shade pavilions, and a carousel. So not too proud, we'll do just about anything. Finished up a couple of houses. We're not doing houses much anymore, but wrapping that up. you know, the buildings I showed you under construction there. So we have a host of things. We're also working on, we have a new hotel going up, our first hospitality project in Boston. It's part of a development with Tishman Speyer across from the Harvard Business School. So there's labs by Henning Larson and Jeannie Gang, and housing by NVRTB, and then we're doing a 17-story hotel. So that's currently under construction. And then we're doing a wellness retreat in the Shenandoah Valley with Olson Kundig. We're doing part of the campus, they're doing part of the campus as well. So those are things that kind of come to mind. So a variety of projects, different scales, different types.
You mentioned that your, I think it was on the early education project that there was a third party company that helped with the engagement. Could you describe the engagement process that you find meaningful?
Yeah, it's funny, you know, we haven't gotten to do that much. We're in St. Louis working on the brick line, and they got third parties again too to go into the neighborhoods. I wish they just let us do it. I think we could do a good job in some ways. But one thing I have learned just in any type of engagement, whether it's with a client or with a group, whether, you know, especially in communities that are in need and such, is what we've learned, and what we've also heard from the people that do this, is you don't ask what do you need. It wouldn't matter where you went, so they can give you a laundry list of what you need. I think the idea is tell us your story, and in that story that they get, you learn why people still stay where they're at, what their hopes and dreams are, and their, you know, aspirations are for their place. So listening to the stories, I think, is what we're do, and that we did just get a commission to do the new Global War on Terrorism Memorial on the Washington Mall next to the Vietnam War Memorial, and it's a new way of doing memorials. There was no design initially. We were selected to work with a design advisory council made up of Gold Star veterans and such, and we are starting a process of conducting interviews. They're flying them into Fayetteville, Arkansas, spending time and asking them to tell us their stories about what they went through. It's quite a cross range of both veterans and civilians. You know, nearly half of the folks that died in the Global War on Terror were civilian contractors. So we have a great cross section of people that we are going to be working with them on storytelling, and then how to interpret that as a way to develop a proposal for the memorial, and thinking of it more as a place than a thing. So it's right at the base of the Lincoln Memorial. So we're working with Julie Bardman and 10 by 10 as well on that, so that we'll all be in the room together. So I'm pretty excited.
Thank you.
Do you want this?
So Bentonville, there's so much exciting work happening there. Thank you. What is the program, or is there one for circulating? What is the transit for people go between the sites that are there and that are about to be there?
Oh, you mean like
Like
mobility.
not in the car,
not or on a bike?
not on the bike. Is there
Well,
a-
they have the
Sir, you know,
public transportation in Arkansas.
no, in Bentonville.
In Arkansas, they have these vans and carts that move people around all over the campus. So that's how they do it. Mass transit is a kind of bit of a mystery. You get them on college campuses, but you don't, and you get a little bit in Fayetteville, but that's about it. And a little bit in Little Rock, and that's, as far as I know, that's about all there is. So we have a problem with that. Hard to get your lead points. But I don't know, man. They want everybody to ride a bike. I got to tell you, it's a big biking culture, and it's a big part of that. We're working on a race course right now with a big biking pavilion stuff, and the investment that they've made into the 70 miles in the small area of bike trails. I literally can go from Fayetteville to Bentonville, which is 30 miles away, just riding a bike. So it's pretty amazing. So mobility is a big part of it, but mass transit, not so much. We even looked there isn't a study done to look at a light rail system on the existing railroad, but that was crushed, so, yeah.
I think that there is a
Another
question
place, another time.
in the chat too that
Oh,
I
yeah?
don't wanna overlook.
Okay.
So can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Okay. So we have a question from Ismar Enriquez. How is universal design and equity addressed on projects that are grounded in a rural suburban context that may not have walkways connections established? What are clients asking for these days?
They may not have what established.
Walkways or connections?
Oh, you mean in the products that we're doing?
I have no idea. That was Ismar. Do you have a clarification, Ismar?
Yeah, well, in the projects we're doing, we have all kinds of connectivity between buildings, and like Thane School. There's all kinds of connections, and there is. I don't know. I don't understand am I missing something? I mean,
I can elaborate. Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. It was amazing. One of the things that we addressed, from the sustainability lens, right, with climate action, right, you can't have climate action without climate justice, and just making sure everybody sort of is addressed, right, and is included in the conversation. So my question was based on some projects that I saw. For instance, when you were talking about the trees from a landscape architect that only uses 2 trees, and I was seeing a lot of stones on the ground, right? And I'm wondering
like
how
the ES-1200 project.
yeah,
Yeah.
how would they be able to, if somebody was wheelchair bound, right?
Right.
Mobility challenge.
Oh,
How
yeah.
would they traverse through the landscape, right? And I'm sure there's already networks of walkways, right? And I also saw that, there are some projects that are kind of like, almost removed from other buildings, right? And so they're kind of standalone structures, like the billboard that you were talking about.
Yeah. So that's connected by sidewalks and biking, so that's part of a network of infrastructure relative to the pediatric clinic, for example. So that really isn't much of a problem. The PS-1200, they literally had to get down because that was a big concern with the stone and calibrate all the stone to make sure it fit within the tolerances that somebody could be to go across on a wheelchair, and it had to be compacted in between. So that was a concern. I'm trying to think of other projects. Well, I mean, even the church, has its own, sidewalks and connectivity as well. Strangely, a lot of the buildings we're doing are 1 story, so they're universal design by their very nature. The exception being something like the Ledger, even then, you can literally walk up to your building. Now, if you're in a wheelchair, you might have to have wheelchair assist to do that because you might get tired doing that. But then you would go inside and you just go with the elevator, like you would other buildings.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, I have yet to see somebody in a wheelchair yet pushing themselves up the ramps there. So I don't know whether it could be done or not, but it seems like it would be tiring.
Yeah, no, I appreciate all these answers. That's great. Sometimes, when we're designing, we tend to do the code minimum, right? So it's like we're trying to address the 5%, but in reality, there's about 1 out of 4 people that, are experiencing some kind of accessibility challenge, if I can put it that way. So it's always great if I can, put a lens even through a question, so that we all are, sensitive to that issue. But thank you so much for the presentation. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we try to integrate it. It's like everybody else when we had all of these requirements, like how are we going to survive? What are we going to do? Ramps hanging off buildings. And then you just learn to integrate it, which becomes part of the architecture. It's no brainer. So that's all good. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, I did that thing that we sometimes do, and I was a preview lurker, and I looked you up on Wikipedia. And so I was curious, did you really sell Bibles to make money while you were in college?
Yes.
And then were you, was your family in the military? Is that how you moved around?
Yeah. So my
Those two together, I'm curious, did they have any influence?
yes. Yes, but maybe that's a kind of preoccupation with place, perhaps, because we were always on the move. So you never became a citizen of any one place, at least as a child. And so you learn how to adapt, you learn how to empathize, because you're on the move. And it was hard, I think, having lasting friendships, because you're constantly even in my senior year of high school, we moved, and so it's kind of discombobulating, but you learn how to a certain degree of resiliency and how to adapt. And I think the Bible selling, it's kind of interesting. I came from a military family with 5 kids. We didn't have any money, to speak of, not to go to college. So I got some financial aid, but in order to make up the difference, I had to work, and I couldn't afford to work at minimum wage at an architect's office. So I did 5 summers of selling Bibles door to door in the rural South as part of a college program. And I did really well and made a lot of money and was able to, we used to say, live like a rat for 3 months, live like a king for 9. So, did that and got to meet some interesting people along the way. And the beauty of that is being in the rural South in places most people only read about, and to meet folks that understand the art of telling stories, which is a great Southern tradition, was amazing. And of course, being welcome into people's homes. And in the morning, I might be talking to a sharecropper. In the afternoon, somebody who's working in the mill, and in the evening, talking to a state representative. And so you learned how to think on your feet. You learned how to communicate with people where they were at, because nobody buys anything if they don't like you, and so these were just principles of selling. In this case, I had a book that kind of sells itself. And usually the people that bought it already had tons of Bibles. If somebody didn't have a Bible, they weren't going to buy one because they didn't have one and they don't want one. So, I think the principles around selling, it helped me in architecture because the principles are principles, and whether they're no matter what it is. So what are we doing as architects? Well, we're selling ideas. So how do we sell those ideas? How do we make them acceptable and desirable for people to invest an incredible amount of treasure to make things? So all of those things worked, I think, really well. And I think to that point, I think we're all shaped by our experiences. They make us who we are, and then that helped. And I have to say, in this recent receiving the commission for this memorial helped, because we surveyed the 5 finalists. We realized that no one had any military background, and I come from a long line of people who have gone to war and lost people in the family. So I felt like I could tell my story to these veterans, to these folks that were considering, so that they understood that it's not about the politics, it's not about the religion, it's about honoring those folks that have served, and who fought for this country in an all volunteer army or armed services. So I think that was a message that they wanted to deliver, and I think that's what we'll be able to deliver too. One that hopefully will point towards peace in a war that's really not resolved, right? There's not an end to it. But all of those, I think, kind of factored in.
More questions? I want to thank you for agreeing to be here in person. It's an honor.
I insisted. Thanks.
It's amazing presentation.
Well, thank you.
And also just to Sarah for hosting us.
Appreciate you.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
A bar and some some food in the back. Please feel free to hang out for a little bit.
How's the Reagan?